What is going on, guys? This is Crozin, and welcome back to Oblivion Remastered with the Samurai build. So I'm not really sure how many people are still playing this game, but I figured I would make a few builds to find out, and with this one we have a very fun role-playing build as a samurai. So we're mainly going to be a melee class, but I did mix in a little bit of magic for some fun creative spells, which I'm sure you guys are going to appreciate. And this build is a lot of fun to play with, so let's get into making it. So beginning with our race, we can actually choose just about any race that we want for our samurai here, and because I don't have any redguards on my channel, I figured I would make a redguard samurai, and plus it does kind of fit the lore a little bit. As far as the origin, you have two options. You could either go with the Alakir Desert or the Dragontail Mountains, and while the Dragontail Mountains do kind of fit the role-playing vibe a little bit more in my opinion, the Alakir Desert simply has better starting stats. So it's going to be up to you. It's personal choice. Do you want better starting stats, or do you want something that kind of fits the role-playing a little bit more? So either way, you can choose either one that you want here. They both work out. As for our class, we will be choosing a custom created class, so go ahead and make your own samurai class. Go with the combat specialization, and then for the favored attributes, go with strength and intelligence. As far as our 7 major skills, we will be selecting athletics, blade, and heavy armor from the combat side. On the magic side, we are going to choose destruction, illusion, and restoration, and for the stealth area, I went with acrobatics, but this is completely optional. There's actually a whole bunch of different options that you can go with for that last major skill. If you want to get deep into alchemy, you can go with that. You could also go with armor, or if you want to use block, you can go with this as well, which I highly recommend that we do level up block a little bit, since it will give us that nice samurai vibe with our katana. As far as the birth sign, the best one will be the Lord. The problem with this though in Oblivion Remastered is that if you have any kind of shield effect on, it's going to degrade your durability of your armor, and you do not want that because you're going to be repairing your armor constantly anytime you have a shield effect. So because of that, I cannot recommend the Lord, and I just simply go with the Mage. So the next step is figuring out our attribute level path, and in this case for the priority I like to go with strength and intelligence at the max priority. I want to get these maxed out as early as I can. Intelligence is going to give me more magicka, strength is going to give me more melee damage and carry weight, and then I also like to go with endurance because health is always going to be important. So once those are maxed out, I do like to go with willpower and speed. Speed is going to be nice for the roleplay of a samurai, and willpower is going to be beneficial for your magicka regeneration. And at level 30, your build's already going to be completed, and this is how your attributes are going to look if you follow my level path. So now we could go over the equipment, and because we are a samurai, we're going to start with katanas. That's going to be the only weapon we're going to use. Now I personally like to go with the Akaviri Dai Katana because this is a two-handed katana, so it just kind of feels a little bit more samurai-like. You can also settle for the Ebony Blade if you are playing on normal difficulty because this works out totally fine. The only difference is this is a one-handed katana, so I don't really like the idea of that. So if you do want the best weapon, just go ahead and select any kind of katana that is not enchanted and go ahead and enchant that yourself. So to get started creating your best weapon, go over to the Wizard's Tower or unlock the Arcane University. Go ahead and select your katana, select a Grand Soul Gem, and then you are ready to start enchanting. So as you are enchanting your weapon, try to put the damage effects first and end with the weakness effects with weakness to magic at the bottom. That way you can get the weakness effects to stack on the next hit. So you're going to see these effects look very similar to the rest of my builds. I basically use the same exact things. In this case we are going to use fire damage. I feel like that's more appropriate for a samurai. So 9 points, 1 second fire damage, 100 points for drain health for 1 second, and then I added drain fatigue to this build, and on normal difficulties you're not going to notice this at all, but if you are playing on higher difficulties where your damage is less, this is where you can actually knock enemies out with the drain fatigue effect. So I do like adding this, and it gives you the option if you want to play on higher difficulties. From there, I do have Soul Trap for 1 second, that way we can easily recharge our weapon, and then Weakness to Fire and Magic 100% for 3 seconds. You kind of want to have this at 3 seconds. If you go any lower than that, then you run the risk of not being able to stack the weakness effects. So 3 seconds is definitely the sweet spot here. For the armor enchants, the best enchants are going to come from the Transcendent Sigil Stones, and you can get these from completing Oblivion Gates at level 17 or higher. So try to look out for the Fortify Magicka effects because we're going to be using a bunch of those. They really are the best for 95% of builds, so try to get a couple of these. I also like to get one Transcendent Sigil Stone that has Detect Life for that 180 foot radius, and it just gives me a very nice feel as a samurai. For the armor set, I go with most of the blade set minus the helmet, and what I do with this is I just enchant it with the Fortify Magicka 50 points from the Transcendent Sigil Stones, so that's going to give you 200 extra points of Magicka to fiddle around with all different types of creative spells. And in case this isn't common knowledge, I just want to state that you can get the complete blade set as well as a katana from Cloud Ruler Temple, which is right at the beginning of the main quest. We can also use a shield with our build even if we have a two-handed katana, so I just go with the Escutcheon of Coral for that nice 35% reflect damage, but any shield will work here. You could enchant your own, or you can go for something like Spellbreaker and get that 30% reflect spell. For the necklace, I go with my own custom enchant with the Detect Life from the Transcendent Sigil Stone. You can also settle for the Necklace of Swords if you find this. That's going to give you 33% reflect damage. Obviously, that's going to stack with the Escutcheon of Coral. However, it kind of gets a little bit OP if you have more than one of these effects on. Our helmet is going to be the Mask of Clavicus Vow, and you can get this from completing the Daedric quest. It doesn't really have a good effect. This is only there for fashion and for roleplay. And finally, for our two rings, we're going to go with the Mundane Ring and the Sorcerer's Ring. Now, the Mundane Ring, you actually can get this as a guaranteed drop if you get very far in the main quest at level 22 or above. The Sorcerer's Ring, you're just going to have to find that on your own, but you can also just settle for your own enchantment with Fortify Magicka. So prior to getting your Transcendent Sigil Stones, you can just enchant some of the Blades pieces with a Grand Soul Gem, and then just go ahead and get that Fortify Magicka. It will give you 24 points, which is just fine until you're able to upgrade them at level 17 or above. So now we can go over one of my favorite parts about making a lot of these builds, and those are the spells. So we're going to start with one of my main fire spells. So I call this one Fire Breath. It is a custom created spell. It gives us fire damage on target, 10 points, 10 feet for 5 seconds. You also have Drain Health and then Drain Fatigue for 10 feet, 100 points, 1 second. I also added Soul Trap on target, only for 1 second and not with any kind of radius. That way we don't get the cost on this too high. And then just add Weakness to Fire on target and Weakness to Magic on target, 100 points, 10 feet for 5 seconds at the very end. So this spell works out very well as a nice AoE spell that you can cast before you hit the target with your katana, and then plus you do have that Drain Fatigue added, which will stack with your katana. My other damaging spell that I use a lot is called Drain Life, and this is an on-touch spell where I have Drain Health 100 points for 1 second. I also added Absorb Health for 35 points 3 seconds, Soul Trap for 3 seconds, and then at the very bottom, Weakness to Magic 100% for 4 seconds. Now this does require a moderate Magicka cost, so if you want to get this down a little bit lower, then just lower the Absorb Health. It really doesn't need to be that high. That's just there if you really want to get some nice health back. I also like to use an AoE crowd control spell, and I call this one Marked for Death. All this is paralysis on target, 10 feet for 1 second, and then Weakness to Fire and Magic 100% 10 feet for 5 seconds. That gives me enough of time to get a katana attack in and have the weakness still on that enemy. Another one of my essential spells is that Willpower Regen spell that you guys are familiar with in a lot of my builds. All this is a Fortify Willpower 100 point spell, and you want to have a very long duration with this. That way you can just have this running in the background. So I go for 65 seconds here. Yes, it does require 100 restoration, and it does require a very high Magicka cost, but you regenerate your Magicka so quickly with this that it's worth it to have this on your character at all times. I also use another Fortify spell, which is my Samurai buff, and all this is a Fortify Health 100 points for 120 seconds and a Feather 100 points for 120 seconds. It does require 129 Magicka, not really too high, but it does give you some nice Fortify health, and you can actually stack this Feather with any of the other Feather spells. So in my case, I use Beast of Burden, which is 250 points for 360 seconds, and this one you can actually purchase from a vendor at max alteration. And since we are a samurai, we do have to have our own custom restoration spell, so I got a spell here called Mend, and this does quite a few things. It gives me restore health 70 points for 3 seconds. I also added restore fatigue 4 points for 20 seconds. It only has like a few extra magicka costs, so I figured why not. Fortify health 70 points for 20 seconds, and I also added that fortify willpower 100 points for 6 seconds to regenerate all that magicka, because this does require a very high magicka amount. So this kind of gets that magicka back very quickly within those 6 seconds. For the last portion of this video, we can go over some combat tips in order for you to become a better samurai. So before I head into a dungeon, I like to use the willpower regen spell as well as the samurai buff spell, and I try to keep these active as much as I can, so refresh them as soon as they run out, and this will drastically improve your character. You will be way more powerful if you keep these active. I also recommend getting the Azura Star as early as you can, and just put that on your hotkey. Since we do have many ways of soul trapping creatures, we'll be able to just go right into Azura Star from our hotkey and recharge our katana. And don't be afraid to mix magic with your katana, so sometimes I'll use a fire breath and then finish the enemy off with my katana, or in an AoE situation I will use marked for death and stun lock all of those enemies within that radius. And the same thing applies with Drain Life, so you can block, go into Drain Life, and then you get the enemy weakened to magic, and it's an easy kill. And speaking of blocking, I like to use blocking a lot with this build because it really fits the role-playing vibe, so a lot of times I'll just block and then go right into a power attack, and that way we can apply the weakness to normal weapons. So thank you guys for watching this samurai build to the end, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something in the process. So I'm not really sure how many people are still playing this game, but if you guys are interested and you guys are watching it, then recommend me some more videos that I can do for Oblivion Remastered, and I might just do one of those builds. So thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next video.